it's Lydia Loveless's least country song to date. The prominent bass driving the melody against the sharper groove and the liquid rollick of the guitars that drives a blur of minor key melodies and something that could almost be out of a new wave song or retro disco. But this track, especially as it falls through that odd guitar line that breaks towards the blast of harmonica that opened up the final chorus, it's aiming a lot higher. Most because it's a song about exploring the loss of faith, or at least disillusionment with faith. The awkward and very human connections that Loveless explored across her album are literally transposed to her problems with the higher power, who is distant, who never answers her calls. Except note the pronoun usage. We built the walls. She knows that she's just as culpable here for not really engaging, and that by her own actions, she doesn't believe that she's got any place in that paradise, that she needs to be stronger. She knows that as much as anyone, that faith is a two-way street, and so is forgiveness. And that drama comes in not seeing either coming through anytime soon, with God or with herself. And for someone who, while not losing his faith, they did more than his fair share about thinking through religion this year, this one got to me. Gotta say that.
It's a false alarm to me. She's a false alarm.
Oh, come on, you knew all this was coming. Man, I wish all Starboy was like this, from the stalking echoes of guitar echoing against the seething synths that build to a killer crescendo to the stomping dark wave of the hook, and the Weeknd delivering one of his most wild performances of his career. And yeah, in terms of content, this is not far removed from the Weeknd's usual warnings against women hunting for cash and fame over everything else, or the bleak mental toll that such behavior could trigger. But again, for as much as this is a dark philosophy, no real judgment here. He's just happy that he got out of the way, unlike so many clueless guys who fell in. But really, the lyrics are barely relevant here. This song is here because of the fantastic build-up crescendos and an utterly wild chorus that absolutely ruled ever since the second I heard this song on Billboard Breakdown. The Weeknd has not sounded this potent since Trilogy, and while we didn't quite get more experimentation like this on Starboy, the seed is still very much there, and I love this all the same.
I pass the signs that promise hell. They don't know me at all. Some are born to sweet delight, and some are born to endless night. Born to endless night.
Man, this is a really great Unsettled Road song. Easily the best track from the Caseline Veirs project. It refines such a strong, subtle, melodic hook against the thicker bass and sharper snares, with just enough reverb against Nico Case's voice as she speeds through the countryside. It's a moment of respite at high speeds, coupled with some of the best subtle backing harmonies that I heard all year, capturing that wild, restless spirit that remains captivating with every quick skitter of percussion and a gorgeous piano bridge. Not really a lot to say about this song one way or the other than I'd really like to hear that promised follow-up collaboration project really just anytime now. I'm waiting. And speaking of collaborations, this one kind of snuck up on me, but I can say that about all of We Got It From Here. Thank you for your service. A record that really has grown on me a lot over the past few months since I reviewed it, and yet this was the song that always grabbed my attention the most, with a huge triumphant guitar lead surging against the graceful touches of ranged instrumentation for the hook, and yep, it fades back for a laid-back bars fest on the verse, as Q-Tip, Fife, Jarobi, and especially Busta Rhymes trade off bars and flows with effortless skill. It's just so ridiculously infectious, and the fact that they decide to reassert their dominance while metaphorically holding a torch for the modern MCs who are holding the line for lyrical hip-hop and experimentation. I love that thematic progression. Of course, I would question putting J. Cole on that list. I'm not wild about the chemtrails line from Q-Tip either, but the chemistry, the interplay, they're so damn solid, I can look past pretty much all of it, including one of the most explosive and stunningly catchy hooks that you will hear all year. Fantastic song, and if this was the end, man, what a way to go.
If we lay a strong enough foundation, we'll pass it on to you I'll give the world to you and you'll blow us all away. Someday, someday, yeah, you'll blow us all away.
You know, I said it when I reviewed the Hamilton mixtape. I'll say it again. This is easily the best Chance the Rapper song I heard all year. To the point where I'd argue this has more impact for me than when they originally performed Dear Theodosia on the Broadway soundtrack. Mostly because Chance brings in Francis and the Lights to give the track the same delicate balance between organic and synthetic that made the best moments of Kanye West 808s and Heartbreak work so damn well for me. Odd, muted Casio tone of the organ emphasizes the downbeat, cheap intimacy of the picture, as does Chance's hushed but amazingly emotive delivery, to the point where the touches of auto-tune add gentle foundation to hold together that trembling emotion. And when you realize that Chance could very well be singing something very similar to his own newborn child, how that ramshackle hope that resonated through the best songs of Coloring Book is just as relevant and just as poignant here, the emotional through line, yeah, it really worked for me. And yeah, I'll admit part of it is the swell and the horns and the bridge that, yeah, it gets me every single time. But as I said when I covered the Hamilton mixtape, this song puts Chance in an entire different weight class of performers, not just rappers. And, you know, I can't wait to hear more. Fantastic song.
I hate you had to leave us, glad you didn't live to see this. The broken pieces of the family. Mama's looking so much older, baby brother can't stay sober. I bet you're rolling over in your grave.
And from New Beginnings, we come to perhaps one of the bleakest songs on this list. And from what you've probably heard thus far, that is saying something. I originally hailed this as my favorite song from Big Day in a Small Town at the mid-year, and while I wouldn't quite say that now, it's the emotional punch that somehow just keeps going. It's very easy to view this track as a companion piece to I Cried from Southern Family, but Since You've Gone to Heaven, it goes beyond the initial grief to what actually comes next, and now everything seems to be collapsing around her at her father figure's passing. Her mother roams through an empty house that she can't bear to sell. Her brother's in and out of jail. The money's drying up and she has to pawn his watch to get him out of jail. The small town's deterioration is coming to sharper focus, though things are supposedly getting better, even though they're not really seeing it. Topical! And even Brandy Clark herself admits that she's been more reckless since his passing. And again, what gives the song its impact is that it doesn't let up. I'm reminded a lot of Ronnie Dunn's Costa Livin' from about 5 years ago, another song that references a ruined small town economy, but it got its weight thanks to never pulling away or showing the upside, because they couldn't see that upside, if it even exists at all. And while of course Brandy Clark's fragile balance between her own grief and being too burned out to show much more is absolutely stunning, credit has to be given to Jay Joyce here too, who knew not to get in the way of a good song, emptied out the mix of anything beyond sparse acoustic melody, faded pedal steel, enough reverb to accentuate that lingering loneliness, especially on a haunting as hell outro. Yeah, it shouldn't be a surprise that this was a favorite for a long time, because it really is something special.
You would like it uptown, it's quiet uptown. He is working through the unimaginable. His hair is gone gray, he passes every day. They say he walks the length of the city. You knock me out, I fall apart. Can you imagine?
Yeah, that's right folks. 2 songs from the Hamilton mixtape are making this list, but honestly, can you blame me here? Reportedly, Kelly Clarkson first was presented with this song without knowing the context of the musical, while she herself was pregnant, so when given a song about a son dying and then trying to recover and save a failing marriage, her response was an email sent back to the people overloaded with swearing, but eventually she did record the cover, and yeah, best thing she's done in years, no question. This is a song that reminds you of why Kelly Clarkson was so much above her reality show beginnings to become a critically beloved superstar. And when she has fantastic material like she does here, she absolutely nails it. And let's make this clear, It's Quiet Uptown has always been one of the most challenging songs from Hamilton, but Clarkson manages to get to the core of the grief and the pain and the desire to pull something together to do the unimaginable. And I'll say it, I love the production here. It's modern and drenched in the same cavernous reverb, but the strings melodies are never compromised, and if anything, it serves to modernize the song in a tasteful but no less powerful way, capturing the empty grief but also lending that swell of recovery. It's an absolutely gorgeous song that reminds us all why Kelly Clarkson was such a tremendous talent years ago. I'm sorry, no way to get around how much I love this song. It's stellar.
Boogieman, you got to help us, can you? Yes, I can.
Oh, I bet some people are going to be surprised that a Childish Gambino song managed to clinch a spot on this list, let alone this one this high, given how I wasn't really wild about the album. But while the record, yeah, has grown a little bit on me, Boogieman remains the absolute standout for being a ridiculously tight, well-written funk song that turns on a dime with a sort of swagger and confidence that reflects a master craftsmanship of a genius. The killer grime of that guitar line, the hook that opens up to one of the few moments where Childish Gambino actually sings with his more regular voice, the completely wild breakdown right afterwards, and the fact that the groove persists all the way through it until the song picks up some impressively eerie effects as it breaks to a whirling cascade of glossy funk. The song is an utter powerhouse. But what really grabbed me most was a lot of the edge in the content, taking the double meaning of boogeyman and striking up a very haunting parallel, because even despite not having that gun, he's the one who's feared by the police, and how can he truly be free as long as that fear exists? At the end of the day, while the production was a tad too slick on Awaken My Love to really click all the way for me, Boogieman, it hit that balance, and it landed on this list. You know, I'm a little bit lost where to even start with this one, partially because, yeah, it seems to come from a different time. Yeah, that's true of a lot of the majority of Kyle Craft's music, a blend of bombastic, gothic-tinged glam rock that'd be right at home in the late 70s. Hell, it's even a song about a burlesque show that tilts right up to the line of stripping, but Kyle Craft is the sort of writer who knows how to twist those tropes in some interesting directions. For one, Berlin has all the power in the song, taking all the attention and just owning it, never satisfied with just the one guy, something which paints the guys drooling all over her, which includes Kyle Craft as much as he might not want to admit it, in the weaker position. There are brief flickers of him wanting to try to save her, but he knows he's not really her type, and instead he's just gonna drink in the spectacle for as much as he can against the jaunty piano and touches of organ balanced perfectly against the guitar and the bass harmonies that make every part of the song so unbelievably catchy. Oh, this is a sleazy as hell song, but Kyle Craft knows enough to crank his delivery up to 11 and own it. And I'm sorry, it's amazingly fun. Definitely check this guy out. He deserves so much more attention. I could write a dissertation on the emotional dynamics of this song, how it goes through several different movements between the piano and the guitar and features one of the most resoundingly potent crescendos that you'll hear in 2016, how Will Toledo walks the balance between awkward pain and a deeply felt rage that feels so justly earned, the horns accenting the mournful collapse. That's before we get to that Dito interpolation that blows my mind every single time I hear it. But then we get to the content, the penultimate point of Teens of Denial, where the depression and self-loathing has underscored the album, and trying to hold something of some sort of facade of normalcy together just completely falls apart, and just like aught before him, the words "I give up" give him a release from his fear as he confronts the deeply held divisions and neuroses held by a generation not allowed to compromise or allowed to make excuses to fight the fact that the previous generation didn't do their goddamn jobs, especially when the real disasters and incoming demise are yawning at his feet. It's tremendous amount of freedom that comes in knowing that your end, that Toledo maximized to the full extent over 11 minutes of fury. It's a monster of a song, and one that I can't help but adore, although not the longest song on this list, but we'll more on that in a little bit.
Goddamn, she murdered everybody, and I was her witness. She works for the money, she worked for the money from the start to the finish. And she worth every dollar, she worth every dollar, and she worth every minute.
You know, there's a part of me that's stunned that this is the Beyonce song I like the most this year. Most because in comparison with a song like Freedom, this could feel a tad slight in its content, except it doesn't feel like that for me. In fact, for as much dark bombast as trap-inspired music wants to create, Beyonce was probably the closest to getting there in 2016, with a huge bass beat kicking leads into a nasal snarl of guitar, where the mix breaks into a blend of gothic bells and backing vocals to flip the opulence until we get something that's a lot nastier, and that's before we get that wiry animal collective interpolation over the bridge with the sharpest trap snares, for the final hook which flips any sense of wealth and beauty once again is something that seems to be dissolving in a gorgeous inferno all around her. And yeah, Beyonce, she sounds incredible on this sort of dead-eyed anthem to piling up the wealth, but part of the reason that this connects so powerfully for me is that she got The Weeknd to play hype man for her to open up the song. His verse is brief, but it sets the stage frighteningly well, not just in the opulence, but how this could be masking something so much darker just by his presence. And if you heard Lemonade, that's very much the case. Again, why this was never released as a single, I will not know. Imagine in 2016 where this went to #1 instead of, say, Closer or One Dance. Doesn't sound a lot better? Does to me.
And I ain't nothing less or nothing more. So baby, if you want the girl next door, then go next door and go right now and don't look back, don't turn around and don't call me when you get bored. Yeah, if you want the girl next door, then go next door.
And on the topic of surprises that I did not expect that I would love as much as I do, here's the lead-off single from Brandy Clark's sophomore album that so many country critics panned for sounding too modern and synthetic and plastic, with the sandy beat, the tight electric groove, and the glossy swells of arranged instrumentation all around that hook. And for the longest time, I was there with them, but I don't know what to say, it penetrated regardless. Brandy Clark's brand of dark intensity might not have the same explosive power as a Carrie Underwood, or the same venom as Miranda Lambert, but she compensates with some of the sharpest writing you will see in country music, especially the mainstream, taking American girl next door stereotypes and skewering them, but she doesn't stop there. The song gets into the headspace of people who chase that archetype and yet are still attracted to her when she's still very much not that girl next door type, no matter how much they want her to change her to become that. It's not castigating that other idea of femininity so much as those trying to define her as something that she's not. And when you pair it with an absolutely killer guitar melody, perfect bass line to intensify that driving roars of guitar and roiling drums, it was a country firestorm that was so very richly earned. You know it's the most traditionally country song in A Sailor's Guide to Earth, and I say that meaning instrumentation and delivery only, because Sturgill Simpson's Sea Stories is precisely that. Mostly set in Southeast Asia, I'm remembering his stint in the Navy. From the ship's bell that opens up the song to the flow of seedy organ backing up the layered guitars to the writing that goes so far beyond any country topics to scenes that could seem bizarre to most listeners. From a perpetual cynicism that comes with military service, to playing GoldenEye on an N64, to a long stint at sea, the prostitutes in Singapore playing Connect 4 is a sort of careening absurdity that can't help but suck you in, especially when Sturgill just starts rattling off Asian ports of call that you would never hear in a country song. And thus, while I was sucked in by the great guitar interlude and that tonal switch up on the bridge, what really grabbed me, the final verse, where our sailor gets addicted to pain medication, gets kicked out of the Navy, tries to get laid on this shitty futon for a year, and then spends the next 15 years trying to figure out why the hell he even bothered to do this in the first place. But hey, at least he's alive, right? Folks, this is the sort of songwriting that I adore in country. So much character and personality, and Sturgill is just belting his lungs out. It's definitely more of a high seas voyage than any pirate flag that Kenny Chesney's ever hoisted. And while I doubt that Sturgill will stick to this sort of country-leaning sound in the long term, he's gonna go off into weird places. This is the best possible example to set, because I love this song. And then we follow it with the most country track from Lydia, Loveless. The best song and title track off her newest album, and I can't even mince words. The emotional roller coaster of this song is something to behold. All at once intensely cynical about love and yet willing and able to take more steps towards it. It's the sort of song where that guy that Lydia Loveless wants is either entangled with somebody else or just a friend for whom that she won't allow herself to feel more. After all, he's no Peter Pan that's gonna take her to the stars, and she emphatically doesn't want that. But for their brief connection, he makes it seem real. The pedal steel swells up against the guitar line, against the cymbals and subtle bass harmonies as that hook slips in to never let her fall. In her mind, she knows it's all fragmented illusions that's undercut at every turn that she purposefully undercuts, and yet she's not gonna let go. Again, the emotional framing, the human complexity of Real by Lydia Loveless made it a tough album to initially appreciate, but with songs like this, she made it seem real. If only for 10 songs, and they're some of the best you'll hear this year, with this being the absolute king of it.
Frankie Sinatra, Frank Sinatra. Frankie, me boy, you don't know, you have a perfect voice to sing calypso. What did they say? Frankie Sinatra, Frank Sinatra. Frankie, me boy, you don't know, you have a perfect voice to sing calypso. What did they say? Frankie, me boy, you don't know, you have a perfect voice to sing calypso.
Okay, of all the songs that I've put on the list thus far, this is the one you've probably seen on other lists. Half because critics absolutely adore the Avalanches' long-awaited comeback album with Wildflower, but also because this song is nuts in the best possible way. Danny Brown's lunacy was terrifying on Atrocity Exhibition, and if you read between the lines, it's got the same sort of danger here, but it's just comical and ridiculous enough to make you laugh along with the insane swagger of it all between the calypso samples of Willmouth Houdini from his 1947 song Bobby Sox Idol. That's before we got MF Doom showing up for his relentless impenetrability, but let's get real. The reason why this song pretty much blew everyone's mind, the same as for me, the sample from My Favorite Things from The Sound of Music. It comes out of nowhere and never ceases to blow my goddamn mind, especially juxtaposed against Danny Brown and MF Doom, not just becoming the sort of zany plunderphonics that's ridiculously colorful and fun, but something damn near transcendent. I mean, whoa, that is something.
What you gonna do about it? Ain't nothing new about it. Should've made the noose a little tighter, cause it ain't nobody dead, just some motherfucking riders. Air 'em out, let 'em breathe. Air 'em out, got the fire. Air 'em out, wanna see. Air 'em out, dude. Should've made the noose a little tighter, cause it ain't nobody dead, just some motherfucking riders.
So this, it's a pretty far out track, but in a completely different way. And also the song that tends to polarize fans of Clipping's space opera concept album, Splendor and Misery. Mostly because it owes the most of their previous self-titled album of material that was more accessible in hip-hop, to the extent of whichever Clipping can be accessible. In this case, manifesting through a cavernous mix, glassy fragments of synth that build towards some amazing interplay on that final hook, and a deep echoing beat that sounds like blast doors slamming shut on the other end of a space station. And of course, Davi Diggs can spit, but the content is what I find fascinating here. A blur of intermingled sci-fi references from effectively a trap anthem from space, where whatever marauding gang to which Diggs' character belonged was abducted and has now been freed from that noose into the unforgiving depths. And if you can't spot the social commentary here, I don't know what to tell you. The hook is stellar, the build-up is insane, the intensity and blend of bars is spectacular, and it's a showcase for all the more reasons why Davi Diggs is one of the most relentlessly skilled rappers in the game right now, and you can still make the sort of tracks that bang hard as hell, even from space, where there's no air to be found. difficult song to analyze, mostly because frontwoman Mish Way's approach to feminist punk and indie rock is tricky to contextualize. She set out to make a song celebrating glamour and beauty, and indeed with the gleaming sparkle, the guitar tones that break into borderline tremolo riffs that are all kinds of awesome. It's easily the prettiest song that White Lung have ever made, but it's also a White Lung song. And that means that Mish Way's writing describing beauty in terms of broken crystals and castigated waste, because by dismissing it out of hand as not having real value, that's how some brands of feminism treat that desire for beauty, even though it won't really last. They brand it as feeding in an empty pride, but Mish Way argues that beauty is meant to be appreciated for its temporary nature, and hopefully not just as calcified portraits, and she's gonna own all of it, even if it is considered base and castigated. But that doesn't mean the search for that beauty is any less human, because since the very beginning we have treasured that aesthetic beauty, and feminism's rejection of it in the modern age is framed as just another way to exclude women instead of cherishing what they might bring. To put it another way, all of White Lung's Paradise is a blistering but extremely necessary examination of feminist subjects that a lot of modern authoritarian feminists would prefer you not discuss, and this song, being far catchier and far more potent than you'd ever expect, definitely that shimmering highlight. Check it out if you haven't, and check out Paradise. Awesome album.
I wonder if I'd sing this song, an exchange of trust and grace, to feel at home before I go.
And on the topic of shimmering guitars and celebrating the littlest of things, here's arguably the best song that Tom Krell has ever written. Why he has not released this as a single continues to blow my mind. He finally put out a music video, about time. But Salt Soul might have initially gotten some ribbing for its plain-spoken sincerity and its pop sense of earnestness, but you know, that's the root of the power, and leads to one of the best hooks of 2016. And hell, it's at the foundation of the song's main idea. How when you built your career off of melancholy, it can be a real risk to find composure and happiness. And when struggling with depression, you might feel that to deserve to be happy, that's a huge step in and of itself. He gets that. Recapturing and accepting that childlike innocence and holding your head high as you go, it's not just dignity, but a brand of maturity that Krell has rarely ever experienced in his music. And it gives the song a tremendous sense of naivete and wonder that's anchored in the slick percussion groove, playing as that whistle on the backdrop of Misty Swell, and that liquid guitar flourish after the second hook, the gorgeous multi-tracking with each hook that balances out the harmonies perfectly, then fades out before an explosive outro that has damn near more power than any other song I heard this year. Again, probably the best song that How to Dress Well has ever made, and I absolutely adore it. Definitely check it out. It deserves a lot more attention.
He'd be driving you home if he was worth half a shit, and his daddy had raised him up right. Let me remind you, there's real love out there down the road.
Okay, look, I've already praised Lori McKenna twice on this list. You know her strengths in terms of brilliant framing of her own life and abstraction, but Halfway Home goes for a much more vulnerable place. That the girl making the late drive home after the hookup, that she's left ending up questioning her own value. She knows the guy's probably not the one, that she deserves a ride home, or at least a full night. If that guy was raised up right, he would know better. And she doesn't want to be seen as one of those dreaming girls searching for a guy that'll save them that will never really come. And yet all with the acknowledgement that there's nothing wrong with wanting someone to hold her, even as he drifts away the second that she kisses him goodnight. Again, the human framing of a song like this is damn near impossible to match. And the fact that Lori McKenna captures the long stares on the empty road, the tired frustration that comes with not having any of the answers, all against Dave Cobb's supple touches around the acoustic guitar that never quite blunts the loneliness as the mix picks up a little bit more swell, but never so much that it overplays the mood, you know, even with a fragment of hope that Lori McKenna tries to give. It's easily one of the most heartbreaking songs of this year, except, well...
They told us our dreams would outlive us. They told us our gods would outlive us. But they lied.
Okay, look. there were a lot of Nick Cave songs that had a shot for this list. I bet some of you are surprised there aren't more here. Over half the album was in the running, and the cuts that I made to get these were painful, mostly driven by the fact that the album really works better as a whole instead of with individual songs, much in the same way that Southern Family does. Of course, there are exceptions, and this is the big one. Mostly because I don't think I've ever gotten through a listen of the song without at least getting a lump in my throat. Hell, I'm getting one right now talking about it. And while there are other songs that get darker or more grief-stricken on the album, Distant Sky feels bigger, with Nick Cave staring out at a reddened sky from behind reddened eyes as he sees that sun begin to rise far, far away. In a rare choice for him, he calls upon Elsie Thorpe to sing two verses opposite him that calls him to pull ahead, to look forward and see that beauty before he must look away. It's not for mortals to see ghosts rise toward the heavens. And Nick Cave's words here are so telling and so powerful. Skeleton Tree is a record that shattered his ability to tell the narratives where he found solace in confronting mortality, the dreams, but in facing those he loved most, gods in his eyes, not outlive him. It's a trembling realization of his own humanity that's painful to hear spoken aloud, but brings a sort of imperfect closure that he so desperately needed for this album. And then Warren Ellis' strings come in against the touches of organ and the swells of cymbals in the background, and yeah, nothing really quite compared with that this year. It was some special.
My little brother is a funny dude. A lot of funny shit happened to him. My other brother pretty funny too. Ain't seen him in a minute though.
Okay, no joking around, this was my favorite hip-hop song of the year, and for most part, it wasn't even a contest. Two stories told by Aesop Rock in stunning detail about his two brothers. One about encountering a gopher on a baseball diamond, one about a ministry concert that went unattended. Both in their own ways about the loss of innocence and confronting death too early. In the first case was several inches of aluminum going through a gopher's skull, and the latter showed in a proclamation by his brother to Aesop Rock's parents that this was a concert that he was willing to die for, highlighting the sense of morbid absurdity that runs through both songs. And yet, there are moments that inspires Aesop Rock to reconnect with a brother that he has not spoken to in a long time. For an album about re-engaging with the world, it's easily one of the most plain-spoken songs that he has ever written, and yet the detail in which he captures each story, given that I'm both a baseball fan, that I also ran the gauntlet as a kid trying to get my hands on provocative art growing up in a Christian household. I remember the heated debate with my folks when I went to go see my first metal show. I get this. This resonated so much more than I ever would have expected, bouncing off of a gentle jingle of percussion and cascades of keys that eventually builds into a scratchy vocal sample and dusty drums to the hook. Coupled with the best wordplay that you will hear all year, Aesop Rock, you hit a home run with this one. Great song.
Tears at a funeral, tears at a funeral, I might break. Angry at all the things I can't change. When you're lost in the universe, don't lose faith. My mother says your whole life's in the hand of God.
Break it down. Okay, I've mentioned in the past that if you want to guarantee a high spot on this list, release a song that will land on my exercise rotation and become a lock. And really, the next couple songs, they all became big staples for that this year, with this being that big closing climax that pretty much redeemed Jon Bellion's entire career by its existence. The rubbery blocks of bass, the liquid guitar fluttering through the background, his muted delivery as he's meandering through bad decisions and maintaining a hookup for all the wrong reasons to put off dealing with some real grief that he has. All this seems pretty familiar territory for Jon Bellion, and then that piano line shifts in the second chorus, and you get the feeling you're in for something a lot bigger. But that does not prepare you for the next few minutes, where he brings in Sheldon Ray and the Andre Crouch choir against a tide of strings and rumbling beats for a choral outro that might as well come off the best Broadway climax. It's a medley of lines merged from across his album, and it's a climax point that finds God, not in the church, but in the little moments that told his entire story. And for as much music that I covered this year that touched on religion, there was a lot of it, come to think about it. This was the penultimate moment. But, on the other hand, you want to flip the script. It's the longest song on this list, and it's the highest placing metal song, and it's for damn good reason. This song effectively serves as the overture to the album Ghost Lights, and it's got a lot of material to get through while still serving as a titanic symphonic metal song, anchored in ominous pianos, choral swells, thunderous royals of drum and bass, and a chugging melodic guitar riff that mirrors the keys before building into something so much more aggressive and bombastic. This is where we get to the vocals from Tobias Sammet's hero having rejected the mystical in face of hard logic and reason, and demanding the world throw whatever it has at him. And then Jorn Lande and Ronnie Adkins as the forces of temptation and magic and the devil do just that, with the strength of a full-fledged primal thunderstorm crashing down upon him with that monstrous chugging groove that still manages to bring the sort of huge hook that will plant the doubts that this song was trying to lodge in its protagonist's mind. Oh, and it's before we discuss the composition that never feels long or overdone at 12 minutes long, featuring incredible guitar work from Oliver Hartman, and manages to hold its atmosphere down to the whirring hums of that outro. It's an utterly kick-ass, utterly stunning song that drives an amazing album. There's very little that could match this majesty. Well, except of course...
Lady of the Ark, I think I found a part. I think I found a piece of what you used to be. Dozing in the back of a funeral car and tangled in the blankets of your memory.
Okay, what? Did you think that Kyle Craft was only getting one song on this list? But if you thought Berlin was something potent, Lady of the Ark is a spectacular example, not just of Kyle Craft's writing and tremendous performance, but also his willingness to experiment more instrumentally. Beginning with heavy acoustic and electric strums against swells of percussion and jingles of the tambourine, midway through it breaks into this Spanish-inspired accordion solo that somehow perfectly fits despite the song's cosmic ambition. And I say cosmic because there's a very real possibility this is indeed a song about a fallen angel that has left Kyle Craft behind to experience the world, and then everything goes kind of crazy. She hooks up with a consummate hedonist who steals her purity and then runs drunkenly off screaming into the night, as you do, and now she's left trying to paw for some sort of attention. And yet, while this could easily resonate as gloating for Kyle Craft as being dumb, he brings in a few important elements to distract from that. One, there's still affection for this girl, but also the acknowledgement that they never really worked to begin with, which lends some healthy ambiguity to the situation. Two, the song is more of a taciturn acknowledgement of what happens when you venture into uncharted territory and are not prepared and things go all sorts of wrong. Not really a condemnation of that, to be fair, as I can see this fallen angel mingling longer with those rock and roll kids for a while, and that wouldn't be a bad thing. And three, the entire song is played like an over-the-top farce. The bombast, the hyperbolic imagery, the fact that Kyle Craft is howling his lungs out, but never really seems angry so much as he is kind of bemused by all of it. It's a patently ridiculous track that seems to be straight out of vaudeville or a carnival barker, which, of course, yeah, that was the point. It meant that Kyle Craft had notched the sort of bona fide classic with ridiculous glam rock that's easily on par with the 70s icons that he emulates. In other words, this is a whole lot of sounds that I love. What could be better than this?
One day you're the king, next you're not. Handshakes and whiskey shots, to throwing up in parking lots all by yourself. But I ain't never leaving Nashville. I ain't never leaving Nashville.
You know, it feels right that my favorite song of this year is a country song. And it's one that you probably could have predicted too, as it fits a lot of the sounds and styles that I like, especially this year. It's a song not just about making music, but living that music life and chasing the dream, and the sort of utterly unforgiving detail that you rarely see coming in mainstream country. Charles Kelly rips away the veneer and reveals the truth of it all against this steady piano line, eventually a cello, upright bass, and touches of acoustic guitar. And the detail is striking and perfectly framed, telling a story that so many songwriters, no, scratch that, artists can understand and immediately relate to. This isn't the naive idealist out of college talking about becoming an artist. This is the songwriter who's been working for a living and knows that if you're not writing singles, you're not getting paid, even if you pour your heart into them. And even if you do get something, not only will it not last, but in a town like that, the relationships are flaky. At the end of the night, you might end up yourself puking behind the bar all by yourself with nobody gonna come and hold your hair. And the framing doesn't shy away from showing what that success will mean and do to you, you become part of the system. You blow off other songwriters in a situation just like yours. And when your own career struggles, you try to make the same calls, and all around you, you see people who have actually made it big and are settling down, have that sense of security you'll never really have, and you're left picking up whatever you have of your life in messy tatters, praying that's enough to spark up that next song, the next bit of artistic ingenuity. And yet, that drama comes, and the knowledge and the truth that, despite all this, you're not leaving Nashville. You're not leaving New York, or Chicago, or LA, or London, or Toronto. You have that dream, and you're not gonna let that go. You're not gonna leave it behind. And though Charles Kelly didn't write the song, he sings it as if he lived it. Probably because he, like so many, he probably did. This song is quiet, desperate melancholy about living that dream. And it's not really a song that's all that comfortable. I'm not surprised this was never pushed as a single. But if you've been chasing that dream, or maybe being a king for a day until you're not and you need to chase it again, like I think so many of us are, this resonated on a primal level for me. And for me, it's the top song, the best song of 2016, without even a question. So yeah, thanks all for watching. I know these lists have been long, and I thank you for being patient all the way through. I got a link to my Patreon where you got more questions about my upcoming schedule. There it is right there. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.